There are moments when the world feels very small, not because it has taken something away, but because it has grown quiet around you. In those moments, nothing dramatic happens. No voices rise, no doors close, and yet something inside begins to move. It often starts with something simple. The way light rests on the floor, the sound of your own breathing when everything else has faded, a feeling that arrives without a name. It is not sadness, not peace either, just a gentle weight sitting quietly in the chest, asking to be noticed. Many people pass through these moments without stopping. They keep their thoughts busy, their hearts loud, but sometimes you pause, and when you do, you begin to feel how much noise has lived inside you for a long time. The words you wanted to say, the reactions you held back or released too quickly, the need to be understood. Silence has a way of revealing these things. It does not rush. It does not explain. It simply waits. In that waiting, memories drift in. Small ones. A look that lingered too long, a sentence left unfinished, a moment when you chose to stay quiet, not because you were weak, but because something inside you asked for restraint. Did you notice how that felt? The tension, the urge to speak, and the calm that came later, slowly, like a breath settling. There is a strange discomfort in quiet moments. Without distraction, the mind wanders to places it usually avoids. Questions appear gently, not demanding answers. Why did that moment stay with me? Why did those words matter so much? Why does silence feel heavier than sound? Perhaps it is because silence does not hide anything. It allows feelings to surface without judgment. You begin to notice how often you react, and how rarely you observe, how quickly the heart wants to defend itself, how easily pride whispers that it must be heard. And yet, in this quiet space, there is no one to impress, no one watching, just you and the truth moving slowly within. Sometimes you may feel the presence of others, even when they are not there, their opinions, their expectations, the way they might interpret your silence. They may think it means distance, or weakness, or indifference. But in this moment, their voices grow faint. What remains is your own. The stillness asks a simple question, softly. What happens when you do not react? When you allow a moment to pass without filling it? When you let a feeling rise and fall without turning it into action? At first, this can feel unsettling, like standing at the edge of something unknown. The mind reaches for familiar patterns. Speak now. Explain yourself, protect your place, but the quiet holds you there gently, reminding you that not every moment requires a response. In this space, time feels different, slower, more forgiving. You begin to sense that strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes it listens, sometimes it waits. The weight in the chest shifts slightly, not gone but understood. It becomes clear that these quiet moments are not empty at all. They are full of meaning, full of lessons that only arrive when the world steps back. And as the silence deepens, something else emerges, a subtle awareness, a sense that within this stillness you are safe, that you do not have to prove anything here, that simply being present is enough for now. The moment does not end with clarity or resolution. It does not need to. It simply rests, like a story waiting to continue. And you remain there, listening, as the quiet prepares you for what comes next. There comes a time when silence is no longer private, when others begin to notice it. Not because it is loud, but because it does not behave the way they expect. They look at you differently, not with anger, but with confusion. Your quiet feels like a question they cannot answer. And when people do not understand something, they often try to explain it in their own way. They may think your silence means distance, or pride, or that you are hiding something. They may believe it is a refusal to care, and without asking, they begin to decide who you are. This is where the quiet becomes heavy. You feel it when their words change, when the space between you and them feels slightly colder, when assumptions move where understanding once lived. You notice it even if nothing is said directly. Silence sharpens awareness. Inside, something stirs, a familiar urge, the wish to explain yourself, to clear the misunderstanding, to say, "This is not what you think," to reach out and correct the story they have created. And yet, something holds you back. You wonder, gently, why it matters so much. Why being misunderstood feels like a weight on the heart. Is it the fear of being seen wrongly, or the deeper fear of not being seen at all? They continue in their way, filling your quiet with their meaning. Sometimes they speak, sometimes they only change their behavior. Either way, the message is felt. Your silence has been noticed and judged. This is not an easy place to stand. Silence, when misunderstood, can feel lonely. It can make you question yourself. Was I wrong to stay quiet? Should I have spoken sooner? Should I explain now before the distance grows? The mind circles these thoughts slowly, each one asking for a response, each one tempting you to react, to defend, to protect your image in their eyes. But when you sit with these thoughts, something becomes clear. If you speak only to correct how you are seen, your words will not come from truth. They will come from fear, and fear rarely brings peace. They may never ask why you are quiet. They may never pause to listen beyond their own expectations. And in that realization, a subtle sadness appears, not sharp, but steady. The sadness of knowing that being understood is not always possible. Still, you remain. You begin to observe how silence tests patience, not just theirs, but yours. It asks whether your sense of self depends on their approval, whether your calm can survive their misunderstanding. There is a strange strength required here, not the kind that pushes back, but the kind that stays grounded. The kind that allows others to be wrong about you without rushing to fix it. This strength is quiet, almost invisible, and that is why it is so often overlooked. You notice how quickly reactions promise relief. Say something and the tension might ease. Explain yourself and the discomfort could fade, but you also sense how temporary that relief would be, because the next misunderstanding would come, and then the next. So the silence remains not as a wall but as a mirror, reflecting back what truly belongs to you and what does not. They continue to speak in their way. You continue to listen not only to them but to yourself, and in that listening you begin to understand something important. Being misunderstood does not take away your truth, it only reveals who is willing to see it without force. The loneliness softens just a little, replaced by a deeper awareness that not every silence needs to be explained, that not every judgment needs an answer. And as you sit there quietly, you realize that this moment is shaping you, teaching you the cost of peace and the value of restraint, preparing you gently for a choice that is still unfolding. At some point, without warning, something begins to settle inside you, not because the world has changed, but because you have been still long enough to hear what was always there. It does not arrive as a sudden insight. There is no clear moment you can point to. It comes quietly, like understanding growing roots beneath the surface. You simply notice that the need to explain yourself has softened. The sharp edge of being misunderstood no longer cuts as deeply. You begin to see your silence differently. Before, it felt like absence, like something missing. Now it feels full, heavy in a steady way, grounded. You realize that what you chose not to say carried more truth than any words you could have offered in haste. This realization brings a gentle shift in how you see strength. For a long time, strength may have seemed like action, like response, like standing tall and making yourself known. But in this quiet space, you sense another kind of power, one that does not rise up but sinks down, one that does know T push outward but holds inward. You notice how much effort it takes to remain calm when the heart wants to react. How much discipline lives inside restraint. This discipline is not cold. It is thoughtful. It asks you to pause, to weigh not just what you feel, but what truly matters. And what matters begins to change. You realize that protecting your peace is not weakness, that choosing silence can be an act of respect, not only for others but for yourself. Each time you do not react, you are choosing to stay aligned with something deeper than pride. They may never see this strength. They may still believe silence means retreat, but that no longer troubles you in the same way, because you are no longer measuring yourself through their eyes. You feel a quiet confidence forming, not loud enough to announce itself, but steady enough to remain. It is the confidence of knowing that your worth does not depend on being understood by everyone. In this space, you start to listen more closely, to the way emotions rise and fall, to the moments when irritation appears and then fades. You watch it all, without judgment, without rushing to intervene. There is a strange freedom in this observation. You begin to understand that not every feeling needs a response, that emotions can be experienced without being acted upon. This understanding brings a sense of control not over others, but over yourself, and that control feels like peace. It becomes clear that silence is not the absence of voice, but the presence of choice. You are choosing when to speak and when not to, choosing what deserves your energy and what does not. This choice feels sacred in a way, like holding something fragile and valuable. You handle it with care now. You reflect on moments when you reacted quickly in the past, how often those reactions brought regret, how words once spoken could not be taken back. And you feel grateful for the restraint you have learned, even if it came through discomfort. The quiet has taught you patience. It has taught you humility. It has taught you that true power does not need to convince anyone of its existence. As this realization deepens, something else happens. You begin to feel less threatened by the actions of others. Their opinions lose some of their weight. Their misunderstandings feel less personal. You see them as moving within their own limits, their own fears. And in seeing this, compassion replaces resentment, not because you excuse everything, but because you understand the cost of reacting from pain. You remain still. The silence around you no longer feels empty. It feels intentional, like a space you have chosen to stand in, fully aware of its weight and its worth. And as you sit there listening to the quiet within, you recognize this moment for what it is. Not an ending, but a turning. A quiet crossing into a strength that does not need to be seen to be real. You breathe gently. The understanding settles, and you carry it with you, quietly, ready for what comes next. There is a quiet moment when you realize that nothing needs to be added anymore. No words waiting at the edge of the tongue, no explanations pressing against the heart, just a steady calm resting where urgency once lived. You still notice what happens around you. You still hear what is said and what is left unsaid, but it moves through you to fare,